I still remember the way Grandma's fingers trembled. We were standing at gate B2, the soft chime of final boarding echoing overhead, and she was holding her boarding pass envelope like it held her future. Her purse slipped off her shoulder as she clutched the flap open, peeking inside. Then again, and again. Her lips parted, just a little. "Sophie," she whispered. "There's nothing in here. There's no ticket." Her voice sounded small, fragile, like it didn't belong in a place full of rolling suitcases and excited voices. I looked at my dad, expecting confusion, concern, something. But instead, he stared down at his phone, scrolling, tapping, acting like she hadn't spoken at all. "Dad?" I asked, stepping forward. He didn't look up. "There must have been a glitch," he said, voice tight. "The site didn't process her ticket. Nothing we can do now. We'll miss the flight." "But she paid." I started, and he cut me off with a sharp glance. "It's fine, Sophie. We've talked about this. Don't start." Grandma stood still, her hand shaking more now. "But Charles, I gave you the money. You said," her voice cracked, "you said it was all booked." He didn't answer her, just zipped up his carry-on and turned toward the gate. Aunt Rachel gave Grandma a soft smile that didn't reach her eyes and said, "Maybe it's better, Mom. Europe's a lot of walking. You said your knees hurt." Then she followed him, just like that. I stood frozen, unsure whether to scream, cry, or run after them. Around us, other families snapped selfies, hugged goodbye, laughed through security. And we just stood there. Me. And my grandmother. And her little suitcase that suddenly seemed far too small for all the hope she had packed inside. She looked at me like a child who couldn't speak. "There's no ticket for me," she murmured. And something inside me knew. That was the moment I really realized love in our family couldn't be seen. My family looked completely outside. The kind of family that wore matching sweaters for holiday weekends, smiled just a little too hard at Instagram posts, and talked in polished tones like yesterday. But underneath all that polish was something hollow, something I didn't know words as a child. Dad was obsessed with appearances. Every moment of our lives was another opportunity for him to control the narrative. When I was little, I thought he just liked things neat. But it wasn't about neatness. It was about presentation. Whether we were having breakfast or attending a wedding, he'd inspect our clothes, criticize our posture, and remind us to act right. His voice was sharp when the cameras were off and sugary smooth when they were on. He could switch it on and off like a light. Mom was different. Not cruel, not angry, just absent. Like a ghost who floated through the house without leaving footprints. She never yelled, never hugged, never really looked you in the eye. Her focus was always somewhere else. A screen, a book, a glass of wine. I used to wonder if she even knew what color my eyes were. Family dinners were performances. We'd sit at the long wooden table Dad insisted on keeping spotless, the silverware arranged just so, and talk about meaningless things. Stock prices, grades, calories. Not feelings. Not real stuff. It always felt like we were pretending to be a family on TV, smiling and nodding for an invisible audience. But Grandma, she was real. She was warmth when everything else was cold. Her hugs lingered. Her voice was soft and low, like a lullaby you never outgrew. She smelled like cinnamon and lavender, and when she laughed, it filled every corner of the room like sunlight. When I was 5, I remember curling up next to her on her couch, eating cinnamon toast and watching black and white movies. She let me wear her scarves and big clip-on earrings, told me stories about her childhood, and made me feel like I mattered. Not because of how I looked or how I acted, but because I was me. Her house felt like a different world. A little messy, a little creaky, but full of life. There were plants in every window, hummingbirds at every feeder, and handwritten notes stuck to the fridge with magnets from all the places she'd been. That fridge door was like a scrapbook of memories, old photos, scribbled drawings I'd made, postcards from cousins, recipes written in faded ink. I could stare at it for hours. Whenever life at home got too much, too tight, too fake, too loud, Grandma's house was my escape. She never asked why I showed up without warning. She just opened the door and said, "Come in, baby. Let's make some cocoa." We shared something special. I wasn't just her granddaughter. I was her shadow, her little partner in crime. I helped her garden in the spring, rake leaves in the fall, and decorate cookies in the winter. She taught me how to sew a button, how to write thank you notes, and how to listen with your whole heart. She was the first person I called when I got my first period, the first person I told about my first crush, and the only person who noticed when I started crying myself to sleep. She'd sit beside me and say, "Your parents, they love you the best way they know how. But that doesn't mean it's the best way for you." Sometimes I think she was the only adult who ever saw me, really saw me, without trying to fix or mold or polish me. I think she saw herself in me. Or maybe she just didn't want me to feel the kind of lonely she had once known. As I got older, I noticed how the rest of the family treated her. Like an afterthought. A wallet with legs. They never listened to her stories. They rolled their eyes when she asked for help. Dad especially. He acted like she was a burden. Something to manage, not someone to cherish. But Grandma never stopped showing up. At birthdays with homemade pies. At recitals with flowers. She mailed handwritten cards for every occasion, even when we didn't reply. Even when we forgot her birthday. She loved us, even when we didn't deserve it. Especially me. So when Dad said she could come on the Europe trip, when he said she should come, I thought maybe things were changing. I thought maybe he finally saw what I saw, that she was the heart of his family. That she deserved joy and beauty and the kind of memories you pack in photo albums. She was so excited. She started practicing how to say hello in French and Italian. She bought a travel pillow, sensible walking shoes, and a bright red suitcase with wheels that lit up. "So you won't lose me in the airport," she joked. She even printed out photos of the Eiffel Tower and clipped them to her fridge. She believed him. She trusted that, after all these years of giving, she was finally being brought along. Not as a babysitter or a plus one, but as someone they actually wanted there. But she didn't know what I knew. That in our family, love had strings. And you were only valuable as long as you were useful. She didn't see it coming. None of us did. Not until we stood at Gate B2. And that envelope in her hand was empty. Thanksgiving had always been at Grandma's house. The little blue one with creaky steps, lace curtains, and a dining table just big enough to squeeze in the whole family, if everyone didn't mind bumping elbows. That year, something felt different. The air smelled the same, roasted turkey, cinnamon pie, and Grandma's signature rosemary stuffing, but the energy in the room was stiff, like everyone was walking on glass. Smiles lasted half a second too long. Laughter was polite, but hollow. Conversations had that tightness, like everyone was holding something back. Dad was at the center of it all, of course. Polished as ever in a crisp sweater and pressed jeans, his voice warm but calculated. He clinked his wine glass just before dessert and stood up like a groom at a rehearsal dinner. "I've got a little surprise," he said, smiling broadly. "Something for the whole family." I glanced around. Even Aunt Rachel raised her eyebrows. Mom looked up from her phone. Grandma, seated at the head of the table in her favorite floral sweater, paused mid-sip of tea, eyes twinkling with curiosity. "A surprise?" she asked. "What kind?" Dad looked around the table like a magician about to pull a rabbit out of his hat. "A trip," he said, spreading his arms. "To Europe. All of us. Next month. I've already started looking at packages. Paris, Rome, maybe even Amsterdam if we can squeeze it in." There was a pause, then a wave of half-gasps, nods, and forced enthusiasm. "Oh, wow," Aunt Rachel said. "That's ambitious," Mom offered. "But Grandma," she lit up like a child. Her hand flew to her mouth. "You're kidding. All of us. Oh, Charles, that sounds... Well, it sounds like a dream." Dad chuckled and took a seat again. "I just thought, after the last few years, we could all use something special. Reconnect. Make memories. You know." It sounded sweet. Thoughtful. Maybe even generous. But I saw the way his eyes flicked toward Grandma's purse when she reached down to adjust it, and I felt the knot in my stomach twist. The rest of the evening was spent dreaming aloud. Which cities, which foods, which sights. Aunt Rachel mentioned wine tastings in Tuscany. Mom mumbled something about Christmas markets in Germany. Even I got caught up in it for a moment, picturing Grandma beneath the Eiffel Tower, her red scarf trailing in the breeze. But it didn't stay magical for long. A week later, Dad invited Grandma over for coffee and planning. She came with her notebook, the one with the embroidered roses and bent pages, and a pen already clipped inside. I sat on the stairs, out of sight, listening. Dad had charts on his laptop, tabs open with flight prices, hotel comparisons, visa details. "See," he said, voice smooth. "I'm covering our flights. Rachel's handling accommodations. It's a team effort. I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to help too." Grandma blinked. "Oh, of course, dear. What do you need?" Dad smiled gently. "Nothing huge. Just the tour packages. Those guided group things. Skip the line tickets, local buses, meals. They bundle everything, makes it easier for everyone. I've priced it at around 22,000. Her eyes widened, but she didn't flinch. "That's quite a bit." "I know," he said, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "But you're the glue in this family, Mom. This trip, it's for you as much as anyone. You've always given so much. Let us make this a celebration of you." She looked down at her lap. "I just never imagined." "I'll wire the deposit this week," he added, like it was already settled. "That way we can secure the group rate." There was a long silence. Then she whispered, "Okay." I remember the way she smiled afterward. It wasn't just about the trip. It was the feeling of being included, of finally being at the center rather than the edge. For once, she wasn't babysitting, or hosting, or cleaning up after us. She was going to be a traveler, a peer, a person. The next day, she called me, her voice breathless with excitement. "Sophie, guess what? We're going to Europe. I'm finally going to see the Eiffel Tower. I never thought I'd live long enough for that." She had already started a little Europe fund in a coffee tin, but she emptied it for spending money. She went shopping for travel gear, those inflatable pillows, compression socks, new cardigans. She even printed out a European train map and taped it to the side of her fridge. "I'm brushing up on my high school French," she laughed. "Je m'appelle Margaret." For the next few weeks, it was all she talked about. But while she was busy learning how to order coffee in Italian, the rest of the family hardly mentioned the trip at all. Aunt Rachel flaked on the planning calls. Mom was vague about packing lists. And Dad acted like he'd already done the hard part, securing the funds. He didn't ask Grandma about travel insurance. He didn't double-check her documents. He didn't even send her the group itinerary. She never noticed. Or maybe she didn't want to. She believed in him. She always had. She believed this was finally her turn to be celebrated, to be seen, to be part of something she'd only ever watched from the kitchen doorway. And she never once suspected that it was never about taking her with us. It was about using her to take the rest of us. The week before the trip felt like a dream, but only for Grandma. She was floating, gliding through life with this newfound energy, this youthful excitement. She sent daily updates in our family group chat. Photos of her suitcase, links to blog posts like top 10 things to pack for Paris, even a selfie of her trying on a floppy hat in front of her bedroom mirror. She was glowing, but the rest of the family wasn't. Aunt Rachel dodged calls. Mom kept saying she was still figuring out dates. And no one else, not even once, offered to help Grandma with anything. No one asked if she needed help with her passport. No one offered to go over the bookings. No one checked if she had her travel vaccines or travel insurance or even a good suitcase. And yet, she kept smiling, kept organizing, kept believing. One afternoon, I found her in the living room, carefully going over papers from the bank. Her glasses were perched low on her nose, and she had that little wrinkle between her eyebrows, the one she always got when she was doing her taxes. I sat on the couch quietly, pretending to scroll on my phone. But I was watching her hands, the way they trembled just slightly as she held a pen. "Everything okay, Grandma?" I asked. She looked up, startled, then smiled. "Oh yes, sweetheart. Just finalizing the transfer." "The what?" She hesitated for a moment. "For the trip. I'm wiring the rest to your dad today. He said the rates will go up if we wait too long. It's better to book everything now." I nodded slowly. My stomach felt tight. "That's a lot, isn't it?" "Oh, I know," she chuckled softly. "But it's worth it. I've never done something like this. Not in 76 years. And besides, your dad's worked so hard to plan it all. I don't want to be the one holding it up." She folded the forms gently and placed them in an envelope. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a checkbook. "He told me to send it today. That way the tour company can reserve our group spots. I wanted to say something. Something real. Something protective. But instead, I just sat there, heart pounding. Why wasn't anyone else doing this? Why was she the only one handing over money? Why did Dad need the funds wired to him instead of directly to the tour agency? Red flags, one after another, but they all clattered quietly inside my head, like marbles rolling around in a drawer. Loud enough for me to notice, but apparently not loud enough to stop anything. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Something wasn't right. It hadn't been right since Thanksgiving. I remembered the way Dad looked at Grandma's purse, the way he had laid out the plan like it was rehearsed, the way everyone else had stepped back, vanished, left her carrying the weight, emotionally and financially. And still I didn't say anything, because when I saw her at breakfast the next morning, she was humming, actually humming, while slicing apples from a great knife. Her cheeks were pink, her hair neatly brushed. She had painted her nails a soft rose color. "This might sound silly," she said, stirring honey into her tea. "But I bought myself a picture. I want to write something every day the places, the people. I want to remember every moment." I looked at her, at that fragile, glowing hope, and I couldn't bring myself to crush it. Because what if I was wrong? What if I made her doubt something that was, for once, making her feel special? She had spent her entire life giving, hosting, feeding, sacrificing. She had missed weddings and graduations to babysit. She had worn old cardigans so her kids could buy prom dresses. And now, finally, she was the one being celebrated. At least, that's what she believed. So I stayed quiet. Later that day, I overheard a phone call. She was on the line with the bank manager, asking to confirm that the wire transfer had gone through. Her voice was soft, but proud. "I just wanted to make sure everything's in order. It's for a family trip. My son is organizing it. Yes, it's quite a lot, but it's something I've always dreamed of." That line stuck with me. Something I've always dreamed of. Dreams are strange. They lift us, blind us. Sometimes they even betray us. And as I watched her hang up the phone, clutching the receipt with trembling fingers, I had never felt smaller in my life. Because deep down I knew something wasn't right, and I hadn't stopped it. Grandma arrived at the airport 2 hours early. We all did, but she was the first to step inside Terminal 3, practically glowing. Her suitcase was small, bright red, and wheeled behind her with that hopeful, almost childlike anticipation. She wore a soft lavender cardigan over a cream blouse, her best slacks, and low-heeled shoes she had carefully cleaned the night before. Around her neck, the silver locket Grandpa gave her in 1978, and that perfume light and floral, the same one she used to wear on Christmas Eve when she hosted dinner for 20 people. She had put it on with care. I remember thinking she looked radiant, almost like she didn't belong in the chaos of a terminal, the fast-paced swirl of rolling bags, loudspeakers, impatient travelers tapping on phones. She stood still, smiling gently, like this moment had been marked in her calendar for years. "Group photo?" she asked, holding up her phone. The rest of the family mumbled and shuffled closer. Dad stood stiffly. Aunt Rachel kept her sunglasses on. No one smiled quite like she did. After the photo, she turned to Dad. "Do we head to the counter now?" Dad looked at his phone. Yeah. Let me check something first." He walked a few steps ahead, tapping on his screen with forced concentration. The rest of us followed slowly toward the check-in area. I stayed close to Grandma. She was humming again. I think it was an old Nat King Cole tune. Her fingers lightly touched the edges of her boarding pass, the one Dad had printed out at home and handed her a few days before. We reached the airline counter. The attendant took our passports and boarding passes, one by one. When it was Grandma's turn, she stepped forward with pride. "Here you go, sweetheart." The woman scanned the paper, paused, then typed something. Her smile faded just slightly. I'm not seeing this reservation in the system." Grandma blinked. "Oh, that can't be. My son arranged it." The woman tried again. "Let me double-check." Dad stepped in quickly. "There must be a glitch. Try looking it up under my last name. The whole family's booked together." She tried. Still nothing. A second attendant came over, whispered something. More typing. More glances. Then the woman behind the counter looked up at Grandma and said gently, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but it looks like there's no reservation under your name." Silence. Not the kind that comes with confusion. The kind that thickens the air. Grandma looked around. At me. At Dad. At Aunt Rachel. At the counter. At the boarding pass in her hand. It was shaking. But I have this," she said, holding it out like it was evidence in court. "He printed it for me." The attendant gave her a polite, pained smile. "That appears to be a placeholder, not an actual ticket." "I'm so sorry." Dad let out a short laugh. "This is just a mix-up, Ma. Calm down." Aunt Rachel chimed in, placing a hand lightly on Grandma's arm. "It's okay, Mom. You don't want to deal with all the travel stress anyway. It's a long flight. You'd be exhausted." That's when it hit her. I saw it hit her. Her body stiffened. Her hand dropped the paper. Her voice barely came out. "You never booked me, did you?" Dad avoided her eyes. "Let's not make a scene, okay? You know how expensive international flights are. You said you were helping. I gave you $20,000. His mouth tightened. "And it's being used for the family trip. That was the plan. For a trip I'm not even going on?" A long silence stretched between them. Around us, travelers kept moving. Announcements echoed. Luggage wheels rolled. But we were stuck. Frozen. She took a step back. Her red suitcase bumped against her heel. The lavender cardigan, suddenly too thin, too soft, did nothing to protect her from what was happening. Her voice, when it returned, was a whisper. "I thought I was part of this." Dad sighed. "Mom, don't do this now." And that was it. That single sentence. Dismissive. Cold. Final. I looked at her face, and I swear I saw something crack. Not loudly. Not publicly. Just quietly, beneath the surface. A heartbreak so personal it didn't even know how to scream. I turned to Dad. "She's not going." "She'll be fine," he said without even turning around. "The airline doesn't offer refunds anyway. It's too late to rebook. She's the one who paid." He shrugged. "And we're the ones going. Let's go." He started walking toward the gate. Aunt Rachel followed. So did the others. I didn't move. Grandma stood still. Her hand was covering her mouth. Tears were gathering. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the type that pools slowly until they spill from the corners of your eyes. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at anyone. And that was the moment I realized. In our family, love always came with a receipt. So I grabbed my own boarding pass, tore it down the middle, dropped it in the trash, and walked right back up the way. The drive home was silent. Not the kind of silence that asks to be broken, the kind that settles in and takes itself through. Heavy, dense, like fog inside my head. I sat in the back seat, Grandma in the front. Neither of us spoke. The city passed us by. Terminals, walls, window signs. It felt like we weren't leaving. Dad hadn't texted. No one had. The plane was probably somewhere over the Atlantic by now. Laughing. Toasting with cheap champagne. We pulled into her driveway, just after dark. The porch light clicked on automatically. It had that warm yellow hue, the one she always said made her house feel like home. I carried her suitcase inside. She didn't ask. She just unlocked the door, stepped in quietly, and took off her shoes like it was any other evening. The red suitcase sat in the center of her living room. Still zipped. She looked at it for a moment, then turned and went into the kitchen. I followed. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She didn't even look angry. Jay. Just tired. So deeply tired that her body moved like it had run out of fuel mid-flight. She opened a cabinet and pulled out a teacup. Not the everyday one. Her favorite one, with a pale blue pattern and tiny crack on the handle. "I'll make the tea," I said, gently taking it from her. She didn't argue. She just nodded once and sank into her usual chair by the window. I filled the kettle. The old one, the one that whistles. She watched the steam rise, her fingers laced together in her lap. Her eyes weren't red, but they were distant, as if she was looking somewhere far beyond the walls of her small kitchen. After a while, she spoke. I thought they meant it this time. Just 6 words. But they hit like thunder. I didn't know what to say. What do you say to someone who just had their hopes surgically removed? She looked out the window. "I even bought walking shoes," she added softly. I was worried my ankles would swell on the cobblestones in Rome. She smiled at that, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind people wear when they're trying not to fall apart in front of someone younger. The kettle screamed. I turned off the stove and poured the water. Added the tea bag, a little milk, 2 sugars, just the way she liked it. I placed the cup in front of her. "Thank you, sweetheart," she whispered. We sat in silence again. The only sound was the clock ticking and the spoon gently clinking against the porcelain as she stirred. I glanced at the suitcase. It was still unopened, still full of all the things she'd folded with care, the scarves, the perfume, the carefully ironed outfits with matching cardigans. I wanted to open it for her, unpack it, put everything away, but I didn't move, because maybe she needed it to stay full for a little while longer. Maybe she needed to pretend, even just for tonight, that the trip was still ahead of her. After a long pause, she said, "When your grandpa died, I promised myself I wouldn't expect anything from anyone. That way, I couldn't be disappointed." I looked at her. Her voice was steady, but her hands were trembling just slightly. "But then your father, he looked so sincere. He even showed me pictures of the hotels, told me he wanted me to see Paris while I still had my eyesight." She gave a weak chuckle. "I started practicing French phrases at night." I bit my lip. Hard. "I'm sorry, Grandma." She reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. "No, baby, you didn't do this. You were the only one who stood still when I was disappearing." I couldn't speak. My throat had closed. We sat like that for a long time. Outside, the neighborhood grew darker. Porch lights blinked on. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. But inside that little kitchen, time had slowed. Not in a magical way, in the way grief sometimes does, where everything is normal and yet nothing is the same. She finished her tea. Slowly, quietly. Then she stood. "I think I'll unpack tomorrow." She didn't look at the suitcase. She didn't need to. I nodded. "Would you stay the night?" she asked, almost shyly. "Of course." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She headed to her room, her steps careful and slow. I followed shortly after and curled up on the living room couch, the familiar old blanket over me. And as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop thinking about what she said. I thought they meant it this time. It echoed in my chest. Because deep down, I think she always hopes they'll mean it. Every single time. And every time, they let her down. But somehow, she still sets the table. Still buys the gifts. Still saves the receipts. Still believes. And that night, I made a silent promise. If she ever dares to believe again, I'll be the reason she's right. The next morning, I woke to the smell of jasmine. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. But when I looked outside the kitchen window, there she was, in her old cotton cardigan, gently trimming the garden, as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't been left behind. As if her heart hadn't been used like a ticket stub, torn and discarded at Gate B2. She moved slowly, deliberately, placing clippings into a small woven basket. Her back was straight, her hair pinned the way she always wore it, elegant, with purpose. But even from inside, I could see it. The slight tremble in her hand, the pause every now and then when she'd stare into the distance, as if replaying something she wished she could forget. I made her coffee the way she liked it. 2 sugars, no cream. When I stepped outside, she didn't turn. Just said softly, "You didn't have to get up so early." "I wanted to," I replied. She reached for a rose that hadn't bloomed yet, touching it gently. "It's funny," she said, "how you can prepare the soil, trim the thorns, give it everything, and sometimes it still won't open." I didn't answer. I just handed her the coffee. She held the cup between her palms, the way someone might hold warmth when they have none left inside. We sat on the edge of the raised garden bed. Birds chirped somewhere nearby, but the air between us was heavy. "I should have known," she said finally. "Your father, he's always been good at making people feel special. But only when he wants something." She didn't say it with anger, just resignation, like someone reciting a fact, long accepted. "I watched him grow into the kind of man who forgets birthdays but remembers bank account numbers," she continued. "And still when he said you're, I believed him. I wanted to." She took a sip of it. "Hope's a stubborn thing, isn't it?" I looked at her really close. "Is wasn't just disappointment. It was accumulated. 1,000 paper cuts of being taken for granted, disguised as gestures of love. You're not alone, I said, voice cold. And you're not crazy. She blinked. I didn't say I was. I know, I replied. But you were made to feel that way. And I want you to know. I saw it too. She finally turned to face me. There was something different in her eyes. Not gratitude, not relief, but recognition. Like she'd been drifting in a fog and had just spotted a lighthouse. You're my family, I told her. Not them. Not anymore. And I won't let them get away with this. She exhaled, a long, tired breath. I appreciate that, sweetheart. But people like your father, they always land on their feet. They charm judges, dodge consequences. That's how they survive. Maybe, I said. But not this time. I pulled out my phone. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. What are you doing? Making a call, I said. To a legal office. Just to ask some questions. Are you sure? She asked. I don't want to cause trouble. That's the thing, I said gently. They already caused it. I'm just not going to let them bury it. She didn't stop me. But she didn't encourage me either. She just looked back at the unopened rosebud. And I stepped away to the far end of the porch, phone pressed to my ear. Thank you for calling Elder Justice Legal Aid. How can I help you today? The voice was calm, professional. I think my grandmother was financially exploited by her son, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He convinced her to give him money for a family trip, but he never planned on bringing her. She was left at the airport, alone. There was a pause. I'm very sorry to hear that. Do you feel safe at home? Is she safe now? Yes, I said. We're safe. It's not violent. Just wrong. Understood. This does fall under elder financial abuse. We can walk you through the reporting process and connect you with someone local who can follow up. Would you like to remain anonymous for now? I looked over at Grandma, who was now gently brushing dirt off her gloves. No, I said. I'd like to give my name. The call continued. Name, location, timeline, amount taken. Each question made it more real, more undeniable. And yet, somehow, with every answer I gave, I felt lighter. Like I was lifting something that had been pressing on my chest for days. By the end of the call, I had an appointment set for later that week. A legal advocate would meet with us, go over options, and help us build a case, if we wanted to. When I hung up, Grandma was still sitting on the edge of the bed, coffee long finished. She didn't ask what I said. She just smiled softly and whispered, "Thank you." Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for me to hear it and believe it. And in that quiet, I realized something. She didn't need revenge. She needed to be believed, to be seen, and maybe, for once, protected. The small legal office smelled faintly of coffee and copy paper. The kind of place where tired advocates sit behind chipped desks and still somehow manage to change lives. Grandma sat beside me, her hands folded in her lap, wearing her best blouse, soft lavender, pearl buttons. The same one she used to wear to church on Sundays. Her posture was upright, dignified, but her eyes darted around, betraying her nerves. A young receptionist smiled as she handed me a clipboard. "Just fill out what you can," she said. "No pressure." Grandma glanced at the form, then at me. "Do I put his name here?" she whispered, barely audible. "Yes," I said gently. "We're not protecting him anymore." A few minutes later, a woman entered the room. Late 40s, sharp but kind eyes, navy blue blazer. She introduced herself as Maya Singh, one of the elder abuse attorneys assigned to our case. "I want to thank you for coming in," she said as she led us into a small meeting room. "Most people don't. They carry the hurt quietly. You did something brave." Grandma didn't respond. I spoke first, told her everything. The Thanksgiving dinner, the stage smiles, the Europe surprise, the emotional manipulation, the airport betrayal. When I got to the part where Grandma stood at the gate, holding an empty boarding pass, Maya looked away briefly, as if even she, after all her experience, still found moments like that difficult to process. When I finished, silence stretched between us. Grandma stared down at her hands. "Mrs. Carter," Maya said softly, "you don't have to say anything. But I want you to know, what happened to you is not just wrong. It's illegal. You trusted your son. He used that trust to take advantage of you financially and emotionally. That is textbook elder financial abuse. Grandma blinked, then gave a faint smile, the kind people wear when they're not used to being defended. We've seen cases like yours before, Maya continued, and we've successfully pursued charges. What he did may qualify for both civil penalties and criminal investigation. And yes, we can help you get your money back. For a second, Grandma said nothing. Then finally, I don't care about the money. Maya nodded, understanding. Then what do you want? She asked gently. Grandma looked up, her eyes watery, but voice steady. I want to matter, she said. I want to know that I wasn't just something they used. It was the clearest, most painful truth she'd spoken since the entire ordeal began. I can't promise justice overnight, Maya said, but I can promise you dignity. And a voice. That was the moment Grandma's shoulders dropped, just a little, like a woman realizing she might not have to carry this weight alone anymore. Over the next hour, Maya walked us through the steps, documentation, witness statements, a review of Grandma's financial transfers. She asked about emails, texts, phone records, anything that could show coercion or deceit. Grandma, surprisingly, remembered everything. Dates, times, even exact phrases my father used. He told me, "You've always wanted to see Paris, haven't you?" she recalled. And when I asked if I'd be a burden, he laughed and said, "Mom, you're the gift." Her voice cracked at the word, gift. It had sounded so sincere at the time. Maya made careful notes, her tone always supportive, never rushed. "I'd like to take your case," she said. "Pro bono, no cost to you." I looked at Grandma. She didn't smile, but she nodded, and slowly. "I think I'd like that," she said. That evening, we returned home. The sky had turned a soft orange, the kind that makes everything beautiful. I heated some soup while Grandma moved slowly through the living room, looking at old photos, most of which now felt like strangers to us. Then, she disappeared into her bedroom. For a while, I let her be. When I finally peeked in, I saw her standing at her dresser, holding her passport. The one she had dug out with so much excitement just days before. She stared at it a long time, then opened the drawer, placed it gently inside, and closed it. Not with a sigh, not with sadness, but with something else. Peace, like someone who no longer needed to chase a dream to feel worthy of one. We sat on the couch later, watching an old movie neither of us paid attention to. I looked at her hands, soft, worn, full of history, and I thought about everything she had given, not just to my father, but to the entire family. Birthday cakes, rent help, holiday dinners, unconditional love, and all they gave her in return was a lesson. Your kindness is negotiable, your place conditional. But not anymore. Not while I was here. "You know," I said, "I've been thinking." Grandma raised an eyebrow, amused. "That's always dangerous. We should take a trip. Just us. Doesn't have to be Europe. Could be the coast. A weekend. A bed and breakfast. Just somewhere new." She tilted her head. "You think I'd trust another suitcase? I'll carry it myself," I smiled. "And I promise you'll get on that plane." She didn't answer right away. But her eyes, they were different now. Not wide with hope, but steady with something deeper. She reached for my hand. "Maybe," she said. "But for now, I'm just glad I'm not invisible anymore." Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. Inside, something had shifted. This story didn't end with revenge. There were no dramatic confrontations. No courtroom battles, not yet anyway. But it ended with something more valuable. Dignity, choice, and a woman once forgotten, now quietly reclaiming her space in the world. One drawer, one breath, one step at a time.